Okay, well, we're talking about children's feelings this evening. And today I've been thinking quite a lot about this because I think it's actually a bigger subject than perhaps people might think. I think it's a bit like your lovely plushies. Have you brought them with you this evening?
Oh, I've always got my plushies with me.
You see, little children don't. And who's that?
I've got the whole range. So I've got the big sloth, the small
Oh,
sloth. We've got a baby sloth in the book after this book.
right. You've got a new book coming out too, haven't you?
I've got a new book coming out with a new character.
Oh, yes. Who's that? Tell us who that is.
So that's Terry the Toucan.
Terry.
Yeah. So the next book, so the first three books obviously sort of delve into that sort of understanding of the nervous system and how that equates to an emotional response, what that might look like, and sort of touches on that area of self-regulation. But the next book starts to look at co-regulation and those sort of bonding experiences and why people feel safe for us. And then sort of the overarching theme is that two can regulate better than one.
Oh, lovely. That's a super idea. And when's your book out?
It is going to print, I think, the day after tomorrow. I'm just waiting for one final approval. We are donating some of the profits to a foundation in Canada that works with women and families in the Maritimes over there. And I have family there, and some quite inspirational people have been a part of my life from that area. So one of our books we donate to the Sloth Conservation Foundation, and this book, because it's about those important connections, we're donating to the IWK in Canada. So we're just waiting for final approval for their little bit in the back, and then we can go. So it's quite exciting, and I'm excited for this one.
You know, I love your book, so I'm looking forward to that one then.
Thank you.
And well, we talked about connections, and actually I think it's quite hard for children to make the connections on how they feel. I think it's quite abstract, a bit like your plushies, you know, for a little child to understand that their heart is beating faster after exercise is something that's in our software. Yeah. All right. But because they don't see a heart, they don't see your lungs, they don't see, you know, they can't make that connection, perhaps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, you know, the roots of the roots of my work is that we have alternatives, you know, not just for autistic children, although obviously, you know, I'm the mum of a 29-year-old with ADHD and autism and lots of comorbidity. And, you know, my career, I've worked with a lot of children with sort of social engagement and communication quirks, you know, neurospicy, we quite like in our family. And some of them just, and they don't have to be neurospicy. Actually, it's a very individual thing, irrelevant of whatever sort of lens you come from. Not everybody understands feelings in some of the traditional ways that they're thought. And one of the earliest things for me was that my autistic child didn't relate to all the emojis that went with feelings when she was taught, and that starts at nursery.
Yeah, it does.
It goes all the way through education. It's that happy face means that mood. And actually for a child who was already maybe struggling with masking, that almost then created another mask that she felt that sort of social pressure to conform to. Whereas actually, you know, her features don't work in that way. And actually, Dr. Paul's work on the Polly Vagal theory and the social communication in the face, that actually recognises that not all facial features give that same communication. And that's why the auditory process and the other senses are important as well.
That's interesting. I remember in my nurseries, we didn't really have, or we didn't encourage, or we didn't purchase books like Thomas the Tank Engine. I'm thinking of the face. You know, things that were not real, just books about things that were not real. There was the bit of Montessori in me there, that children really need to understand the real thing before the abstract. But feelings is very abstract. You know, feelings is not something very tangible.
And it's subjective to each and every one of us. You know, and many children do conform to, you know, these very sort of specific emotions, and there's a lot of research out there to support that. But as an evolving species, our nervous system is out of sync, and a lot of the emotional response comes from how our nervous system shifts into various flow states in terms of our sort of root, sort of primeval response, you know, that very inherent response we have that runs through our entire body. And I think certainly with all of the children I've worked with, allowing them a language or an action that helps explain that they're having a response without the pressure to name it according to someone else's rules actually can be very soothing. And at a very early age, then you're not applying stigma to certain things. And it's tricky, you know, developmental stages are all over the place since COVID. And like you say, for a very young child, you've got limited language, limited understanding, because they're still in different developmental stages. And what I would really like to see is the focus on some very, very simple sensory recognition to their developmental stages and to their individual abilities that allows them a language to communicate.
Gosh,
and
that's interesting.
Yeah,
sort of like a child development around feelings.
Yeah, to sort of run alongside the developmental stages is once they can recognise their heart rate, you know, then there can be a recognition of the heart rate going up and down. And as well, it's building in that, you know, a heart rate going up when something's going to happen, that fear. I think if we show them a picture and say this is fear, we're missing the point that actually
it could be excitement.
It could be excitement, and it could be a mobilizing feature that is a driver then to do something and try something. But if as an adult we're going, what are you scared of? Then we are putting that assumption onto them.
That label on it.
Yeah, I think that language is really, really important. I mean, I had an amazing moment with a small child. He's not nursery, he's year R. And he's non-verbal at school, and wasn't able to express himself. But he read the first books with his nan, and she bought him a set of these. And I sat with him and went through the books. And I said, you know, sometimes when we don't have words, but we have a tummy ache, you know, and those messages go from the brain to the tummy, but we can't find the words. Sometimes it's okay to say, my tummy's speaking for me. And he was overwhelmed. You know, he had a cry with his nan, and then he sat and chatted for about half an hour, and we went through everything in the book. And he now walks around with these at school and points to the tummy if he's feeling overwhelmed. He doesn't use the word overwhelmed. He doesn't need to,'t he's 6. You know, so it's sort of allowing him to have that agency over how he's expressing that, because the other ways haven't worked. You know?
It's interesting because I don't think personally I really listen to my body. I do have aches and pains, you know, have a hay fever or a sore shoulder and what have you. But I don't think I have ever really listened to what my body's telling me, apart from being too tired to do anything. And I'm wondering how we encourage children to do that, because they've got to feel that. I can feel excitement. I can feel. I mean, I do feel, but I wouldn't say it was because my tummy was got what's the word, butterflies in it. I personally don't recognise that.
And there are some children that actually can't recognise that, but it is quite rare. Some of the good practice that I've seen, so there's a lady in America, Dr. Laurie DeSaltles, and she has a great education program called about the autonomic nervous system. And it's like a little character that's the nervous system called Ans, and she has created a whole language using like sensory words. So you wouldn't necessarily say I'm cross, you would say I'm prickly, or I'm tickly, or I'm scratchy, or as they develop with their language, even as far as I'm hot. Yeah, I'm hot, or I'm stiff, or or just pointing to the body. Our nervous system response is what creates the emotional response, and yet what we don't teach children is the why of where these things come from. We're very good at going, here's 100 words to describe your feelings, and like I've said before, one of the first things children say is no, followed by why do I have to do that, why, understanding the why of how the body interprets information. And occupational therapists are incredibly good at this, because they're working with that sensory system all the time, and they're really understanding what comes in and aligning some of the sort of language that we recognise more with the sensations in the body, can be really effective. And some people would say, well, in early years, they're not developed to understand that yet. But I would say that in early years, there will be some children that are.
I think the issue, challenge is that in early years, you don't, because you're not personally feeling it, you're having to tune into that child and then put a word on how perhaps their body is reacting. It's the same as learning hydrangea with a hydrangea in their hand.
Yeah.
And that makes it quite tricky. But that's really interesting, because I think in early years we definitely presume how children perhaps are feeling, and we do presume that this is the word that's attached to how they're feeling. And there are lots of books about Angry Arthur, for example, which is one that comes to mind, that sort of put feelings in context for children. But it doesn't mean to say if they've got a red face that they're angry, does it? It could be that they're just feeling hot.
Yeah.
And might be feeling sick. That's really interesting.
It is.
I do think it's a complicated subject, a really complicated subject.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think the problem is that where early years and primary don't necessarily work together. I mean, I've got 14, 15-year-olds who are less able to explain their body than some 3 and 4-year-olds who are quite capable of explaining the body and using these. And I think in society where we sort of miss opportunities sometimes is we
presume the children can't do it because they're little.
Yeah, we our systems are designed to aim to an age range specific to those children's needs. But what we know, I work with a few early years, I work with primary, I work with secondary, and I work with further education and adults. And I've got less emotionally articulate and aware adults than I have some 6-year-olds, and they are quite capable of understanding some of this. So I think it's about having a range of layers of understanding and making that accessible to children, in quite a simple, easy way. which my books at the moment wouldn't necessarily be suitable for a nursery child to read.
However, no, but they're really suitable for nursery practitioners to read.
Yes, they are. And I have a lot of nurseries who read them. The staff are more aware. And this is where this whole idea of connections and the bonding book and the mirror neurons is this concept of role modeling and being able to work that through with the child, and sort of make gentle suggestions and ask gentle questions. And of course, it's not part of the early years framework. So why does it need to be done? I would say as a species, if we don't get a better grip of how our nervous system creates this information, then we're just storing up more and more trouble. I mean,
yeah, that's the same. That's the same with everything, isn't it? I say every time, you've probably heard me say it before, what children learn in early years sets their lives up really for the rest of their lives. I was saying it affects whatever the early years experience a child gets, and hopefully it's a positive one, will affect their lives into their 30s. But somebody told me the other day, actually, research has shown it affects their lives into their 50s. Yeah. So, and we're quite right. I mean, when I first set my nurseries up, and that's over 35 years ago now, we had a Sinclair Spectrum, tiny little computer. And we put it in a board so it sat flat so the children could type on it. Now the children were better at. I didn't know much about computers in those days. I just happened to be married to a man who was computer mad, and but the children, and it happened all the way through nursery, all through the years that I had my nurseries. The children knew more about the computers and how it all worked. The games that they played, and we always made it a communal thing. We always had more than one chair around the computer so they could share and teach each other. They knew more about it than we did, and the children are like that. They sort of soak up anything, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. And I think that assumption that they're too young for certain things, I think we miss an opportunity to allow them some sort of exploration of themselves. I mean, of course, key developmental stages are important, and of course, we don't want to overwhelm them with information. But I think there are simple ways to explore this. We do a lot of sensory stuff with crinkle toys and scrunchy paper, and it'd be quite acceptable for a child to be able to scrunch up a bit of paper to explain a feeling, rather than have to explain a feeling with a word if they're not necessarily ready to attach a label to that feeling, rather than the adult attaching the label to the feeling.
You said something there, because I don't actually believe you can overwhelm a child. I think they just switch off. I think they just take in the information that they need at the time and they discard the rest, or they're not interested, in which case you're not on the mark at all. You're not tuning in.
I'm afraid that's the same at 55.
Sorry, say that again?
And I'm afraid that's the same at 55.
Well, yeah, maybe. I can't remember what it was like to be 55. But going back to modelling, now, there has to be, can you explain a bit more about how you would model it to a young child? Because I'm not sure I would know how to do that.
Do you know what? I think something as simple as a body map.
Okay.
On the wall. And, the child has a sticker. So sometimes you get the mood boards where they are happy, sad, or weather. There's no reason that couldn't be on a body map. And then you've got sort of plushies like this, or stickers with plushies like this, or something with their name on. And you start to introduce the conversation by just saying, where are you feeling?
Yeah.
Not how are you feeling,
but where
are you feeling? And some children, that's going to be as abstract as trying to come up with words. But I think if there's a choice, there's no reason you can't have a faces board for the kids that want to use a face. And then for the children who are struggling with the faces, have a body board, and then they can see each other. They'll learn from each other how that crosses over. And get the staff to put their stuff up there. You know, get the staff to, you know, they should be regulated. You know?
Yeah, no, that would be the modelling, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I've got a funny feeling in my tummy today, so I put my sticker on my tummy, on the tummy part of the body map.
Yeah. And I mean, with the really little ones, like you say, it's going to be very hard to differentiate between a tummy ache
and a headache
and an emotion and an emotional response, because sometimes they might just have an upset tummy. But you are purely introducing the idea so that as they go up and the conversations grow and develop. I mean, I worked with a little girl Friday, and you know, she'd read the books, she'd read my books, and we started going through. And I only put the 5 senses in the first book because it is for children, and I don't want to overwhelm them with the bigger words, with the other senses that are used. But she was really bright, ahead of her game, and she came in and she went, actually, there's more than 5 senses. I said, yes, I know, but not all children know that. So, and then she reeled off the other senses and what they were.
Oh, do tell us, Amanda. Somebody's asking in the chat, what are they?
So you've got neuroception, interoception, and proprioception.
Right.
And they help you understand where you are within your body, where your body is within its environment.
So like spatial awareness.
And where your movement is within your body and your environment.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
I don't use them because I work with children, and the majority of the children I work with, I would lose them if I started to go along there. So I tend to go,
those terms.
These are the 5. Yeah, these are the 5. There are more, and when you are older, we will look into that if we need to. It's about what is appropriate at what age. You know, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily be, but I wouldn't be going into nursery and teaching them fight, flight, freeze.
No.
But I would say, you know, your brain sends messages via brain cells to your body parts, and they can make flutters and tickles and wiggles and shakes, and you know, there's so many different ways to do that. You know, there's so many different ways. Sensory play, water, dance, movement, all play. And actually, I had a play therapist that wrote her master's using my first book, and she incorporated that conversation in with her play therapy program, and it sped up the play therapy process.
Yeah, I think you sent that to me actually.
Yeah, so that's quite exciting. So through play gives us that opportunity, you know, to introduce the idea that, and it's the root of everything. It's this is all very normal. You know, it's children are still coming up, and I'm still getting them referred to me, and they are still attaching shame to their emotional responses, despite all the mental health education stuff that's out there, despite all the programs designed to make the conversation easier. These children are still shamed because of their visible responses to an emotional impact in the body.
Yeah, we last time when we spoke, and people can find it on the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
we were talking about behaviour policy. Should we call it a behaviour policy? And that conversation with you really hit home with me.
Yeah.
And the same with this, really, that we're asking our children, we shouldn't be asking our children to write their name before they have all the skills they need to be able to do that successfully and properly the first time round. And this is very similar, you know. It's getting back, really getting down to basics. But as a practitioner, you'd really have to know your children very, very well, I think.
But I think that's why it's important that, you know, it would be nursery practitioner led, because and it's like a lot of the stuff in schools. You know, I have a couple of friends who are head teachers, and we have great debates over whether school staff should be doing some of this, and it's no different for nursery practitioners, whether those practitioners should be doing some of this key developmental work around our emotional responses, because it should be done at home, and it should be done by CAMS. Ultimately, full staff.
Well, hopefully, if it's done early enough, it doesn't need to be done by CAMS.
No, but the point is that sometimes those educational staff and the support staff, sometimes the lunch ladies, sometimes the caretaker, they are the key individuals in that child's life. You know, and that's where we sort of, these wider societal discussions don't necessarily link in. And as you know, I work in between all the systems to try and bring some of these together. And early years comes up. It's not my main area of work, but early years comes up. So that sort of led to all the discussions I've had over the years. And
but when I set my first nursery up in 1985, sorry, day nurseries did not provide education.
No.
It was a taboo.
Yeah.
Now, my nursery, because I'd been working with special educational needs children, 8 till 21-year-olds, I worked in several residential schools with behavioural difficulties, for example, language difficulties. But because of that, education was just ingrained into me, and I provided education from day one. Just because the system doesn't do something, I see it as being similar. You know, we don't actually, a lot of harm is possibly being done to some children because we're getting this wrong. We're getting it wrong, and also we're not supporting the education around how people feel. And a lot of people commit suicide, don't they? Because they can't tell people how they feel, and they get overwhelmed with it all, and life's not worth living. And we have a suicide rate, particularly in men. Yeah. So personally, I think we need to, we need to embrace it in early years. How we embrace it is another matter. We need training and support on that.
And that's the debate, isn't it? It's I know what I think should be happening, what ideally I would like to see is that in all areas of society, is that alongside a language that we use to express an emotional response, is that a key part of developmental learning throughout every area of education is that we align that with the physiological and neurological responses that we have that go alongside that. Because for some children, that is going to be key to being able to take the shame out of that behaviour. And it can be I know it's life-changing because I see it. And I work with children who were in a dark place and are now thriving, and they are able to verbalise that the difference was taking the shame out of that conversation. And as you know, my work started with adolescents, and I'm right down to the younger ones now and training adults. So it's about now taking that and even a step further.
The training of the adults, I think, is really important, because I said to you, I don't think I'm really in tune with my bodily feelings as such.
And that's lifelong, I'm doing the full certificate course now with the Polly Vagal Institute. I did an early course, and now I'm doing the full course. And this really goes into your sinus arrhythmias and the way your heart and your vagal nerve system works with each other, and it goes into breath work. And the more I go through it, the more passionate I become about us really understanding our bodies and it's an art of life. We don't even know how to breathe properly anymore, and that affects affects our posture. It affects our entire nervous system. It affects our gut. It affects all the organs, our muscles, because our diaphragm isn't working properly. And I think even if at the earliest stages a child can go, I feel out of breath, so and so took my toy and I feel out of breath, and I'm cross. And then that comes from them. But if we can get them to recognise, actually, if this small tiny boy with clenched fists is going because someone's pinched something, yes, they're cross, but their body is doing something as well. It's having a physiological response, and whether that's heart rate, breathing, whether it's muscles, there are simpler ways. And I think in nursery settings, it has to be creative, it has to be playful, and it has to be to some extent led by the staff. But it's that staff training and that's
the point I was getting at.
Awareness, that self-awareness of the body. And I think if you start saying to people, you need regulation, self-regulation, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, if someone's had some significant trauma in their life, that's going to potentially make them feel quite unwell. If you can come at it from a lens where this is what your body does, this is why it does it, and actually it's really healthy to be able to say, well, this is what my body's doing. So for me, one of the most valid and valuable things I've got is that I have an adult model that I'm developing that goes with the Toucan. So it's the Toucan Tango, and it's looking at professionalism from the lens of working with another professional that your nervous system is not comfortable with. Okay. So we're coming away from, I don't like her. Maybe she's got a different opinion to me. Maybe she used to be married to my brother. I don't know. We make those attachments, don't we? We make those attachments. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not good at their job. Be able to separate that a little bit and go, right, okay. So, but it's like the dance, the tango is a firm stance. You have a follower and a leader, and you sort of come in and you go out. If you've got two leaders, how do you then manage the dance? There's a clash. And I'm actually really good at going, do you know what? My nervous system picks up something in you that makes me responsive, and I'm making you aware of that because it's my issue, but I don't want you to think that you've done anything. This is my nervous system that's picking something up. So I'm telling you that now, so there's no confusion. And then we don't have to, you can go, right, our nervous systems don't align. However, if we can recognise that, but recognise that we are both really good at our job, we can enter a passionately pragmatic process of being able to enjoy the dance and be able to come up with solutions that work for everybody.
It's communication, isn't it? The whole thing. I mean,
it is.
Communicate how you feel, as a small child. So, I mean, it would be lovely if a child could say at the supermarket, I would like some sweets because or I'd like this toy because but they don't have the language to do that, so they get themselves in a state, and then you have a child that's ranting and raving on the spot and embarrassing for their parent, etc., and the parent then responds in the most hideous way, and then the child, I suppose those are the behaviors, the reactions the child grows up to feel shamed about. I certainly acted on my feelings as a child. Definitely acted on my feelings when I was a child, older child particularly. But it's the blind leading the blind. We had a spark debate with Sue Asquith about well-being in April, and the staff have to feel well looked after and considered and respected, etc., before actually they can do that for the child. You know, and this is the same thing, I think, that a lot of people who are practitioners and teachers definitely won't have experienced any of this before, which is a good thing, because they'd be starting from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, learning something new from scratch. Everybody would be on the same playing field, as it were. But, you know, we need that help and support to put something in place for our children, because it is needed, because it is a way of communication, and communication and language is one of the strongest strongest indicators for how a child's life is going to be later on. So if we could actually help and support children with how they actually feel, whether that be a name, a feeling name, or a feeling word, how their body feels, I think that would be really advanced.
And I saw, I think it was just on a TikTok reel or something. There was something I saw on one of the social medias that said communication is only effective when there is comprehension.
I saw that on your post, actually.
I shared it on something.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if I commented, but in my nurseries, I might not have commented, but in my nurseries, we had a saying that if something is, it's not the person that's communicated to that's at fault, it's the person that's done the communication in the first place. Because if somebody doesn't really understand, and something happened with us, actually, I said to somebody, put up the post with the jigsaw in it. Do you understand me? She said yes. Well, she didn't actually, but it wasn't her fault. It was my fault, because I didn't actually explain it well enough. You'll see a bit of the jigsaw at the end of this presentation.
And it's like, you know, it's that phrase is used, all behaviour is a communication. It's only a communication in as far as you are comprehending it.
That's right.
Without clarifying the comprehension, without clarifying the understanding, the communication is an assumption of what you see, which sometimes is just a visual representation of behaviour.
Or I think with adults, sometimes you know them very well and you just presume they know. You know, you work really closely with somebody in a team and you just presume they're on the same wavelength as you when you communicate. I'm terrible at that. I do that often. And then sometimes I have to write long, detailed emails, Amanda, to explain all the ins and outs, just to make sure that nobody gets the wrong. We're going off track a little bit, but you know, that nobody gets the wrong idea about what I'm trying to say. But anyway, we're going off track a little bit.
But no,
let's see.
I mean, to that end, you know, we are in the process of, you know, working with different early years practitioners to look at how we turn the books into a much more accessible, younger model, because we do older training for staff. So the next thing for us, so this book's all about the connection. The next book is going to look at womb to 3. So we're going to try and tie it up with that and sort of bring in some of that developmental thing. And then, you know, hopefully we can create a model
for early years.
For early years.
For early years training first.
That runs alongside, you know, the model will speak to the training will tie into the model. So so it is on the list to do. But what's really important is having these conversations, putting them out there, and then getting all of that feedback, passionate feedback, hopefully. People who are passionately opposed to the idea with all the reasons why, people who are passionately supportive of all the ideas. Why would somebody not agree with this? I think there's probably a cohort that would feel that it's it wouldn't align with developmental stages, with developmental learning, developmental stages. And should we be doing this to children? You know, I obviously think we should, but you know, it's like with good research. With good research, there's always a rebuttal. So a good research document will always have someone that will oppose it. So, you know, and that goes with it. But it's really important to understand, you know, the science of the opposition and opposing views, you know, rather than sit in a vacuum.
I mean, I work with child development every day. I mean, that's what our software is all about. It's about helping and supporting educators and parents understand what might come next for this child. So it's quite holistic. It doesn't say the child can do this, now they need to do that. Okay. It has a little elements of that. Now, with scissor skills, for example, we snip and then we cut and then we cut along or between lines and that sort of thing. But there's always a choice there. So if that makes sense. And because development isn't always linear.
No.
And the child's interests don't necessarily correspond, okay, with what might be perceived as the next step for the child anyway. But this is very, I think if the responses or the body feelings could be identified, I think if people were more aware, it's like in our software, we give these ideas for progression. Now, a lot of those ideas, particularly in personal, social, emotional development, are not things you can make a child do. You can't make a child have a friend. You can't make a child concentrate. You can try and help that, but you can't make them. You can't make a child respect an adult or like an adult, you know. No. But by just suggesting that this could be the next step for the child, suddenly people are recognizing that it's happening.
Yeah.
You know, because it's in their RAS, you know, where you buy a yellow car or a car and you don't see, because you think it's unusual, and then you see loads of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's brought into our minds.
Yeah.
And so I think if it was mapped out in a logical way, then I think it would be recognized by people. And that's the point. We talk about being tuned into children, and as practitioners, we try to get under their skins, and we try to understand where they're coming from, what they're interested in, where they are developmentally. But this is just going that bit deeper, I feel. And I think personally, if it was mapped out, then it wouldn't be difficult to put into practice, or it wouldn't be difficult to put some practice around it.
No, and only as practitioners I have spoken to, and the families and the parents and the sort of smaller children, it hasn't felt a complicated conversation so far.
No. It's the not knowing, I think, Amanda. I think at the moment, for me, it would be knowing what perhaps should come next developmentally. Yeah. You know, in our software, we have got the child recognises that their heart speeds up when they've had after exercise, for example. I don't think there is anything else that I can recall that's in our learning journey. And we've got about I don't know how many actually, probably about 5,000 observations. Okay, because the whole idea is that observations are quick, and giving the child an opportunity is quick. If that makes sense, it's there in front of them. But I don't think we've got anything in our software at all. We do have talking about feelings. I'm going to have to go and look at it now, aren't I?
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me an extra job.
I always do, I think.
A healthy one.
Yes.
But I'm not sure at this minute in time, because it is important and it's part of our EYFS. I think it's still in the EYFS. I mean, we're not we're not in a straitjacket as far as the EYFS is concerned. We're much more around what is best practice. But I think it is something that has to be recognised, that children can express their feelings. Unfortunately, I'm sure that's still in there.
Yeah.
Need to have a look. Right, has anybody on the chat got any questions or comments? We're going really deep here.
Yeah, there are a few there. I can't see them all very well from here.
Okay. So for her baby, if you're going to do a book 0 to 3,
yeah,
how are you going to tackle that? Do you want to give us a clue? Somebody's asking.
Yes. So in this next book, the reason that Terry is in charge is because Hetty's going to have a baby, so she's not in the picture. And so Tam recognises that he had a little sister, so he knew what that entailed. So when we come back for book 5, Hetty's going to have her baby.
Right. Okay.
And Tam is going to observe the reciprocity. I'm a huge fan of the Solihull approach, and in this 4th book, we're really lucky that Dr. Hazel Douglas, that wrote the Solihull approach, has actually done as a small foreword. So I'm really fangirling over that.
Excellent.
And so what we're going to be looking at then is Tam observing
what's going on with his baby's sister, brother,
the baby, remembering what had gone on with his baby sister, who's now older. So we're going to have the what had happened, remembering his sister in the womb, seeing Hetty with the small baby, and then comparing that to his sort of toddler sister now.
Oh, okay.
And then obviously bringing that conversation in around reciprocity, and then tying that in with how we recognise safety in others and that social engagement system, but obviously taking it one step further and looking at bonding. So it's probably going to be called bonding, but I haven't quite decided yet.
Right. Okay. All right. We're looking forward to the 5th book now.
I know. I think I'm up to about 25, and I've got 4 grown-up books that I want to write as well. So
okay.
A sabbatical at some point.
Okay. Right. Well, I don't know how long we've been going for. What time is it? Oh, we're doing very well. What if nobody's got any questions or comments they want to make?